Hey everyone, welcome to Software Testing Mentor and RCV Academy. Today I'm going to start a brand new tutorial series completely on Selectors Hub. Okay, now before we go ahead and see what exactly Selectors Hub is, let's quickly go to the Selectors Hub website and see what Selectors Hub is all about, right? So I'll simply go and type in Selectors Hub and let's go to the website, basically what exactly it is all about and then why do we need to go ahead and use. So if you go to Selectors Hub website, you will see that it is a free XPath plugin, right? And there are different versions of free and pro version, and I'll be using the free version of Selectors Hub and I'll be explaining all the features that are available in the free version of the Selectors Hub. Okay, so in order to go ahead and install, basically you can directly go from this particular website. Okay, and if I go to the install, it will take you to the page where all it is basically supported. So it is supported on most of the browsers. So for example, Chrome, Firefox, Edge, Opera, you will see the list of the browsers where it is basically supported. I have to install on Chrome because I'm using Chrome. So I'll go ahead and click on install and it will directly take me to the extension page, right? If you do not want to go this path from their website, okay, what I'll do is I'll simply from the browser, okay, I have to simply go here from the drop down and go to the settings. And from the settings, you will see this extensions. Okay, now in the extensions, we will simply go ahead and go to this icon here and click on Open Chrome Web Store. So it will basically take us to the web store and we can search for any of the add-ons that are available there. So in order to install Selectors Hub, I'll simply say Selectors Hub. Okay, search it and it will search the Selectors Hub add-on, which we can easily add into the browser. Okay, so we'll simply add the Selectors Hub and then click on add to Chrome. You can see that almost 100,000 plus users, and I am very active user of Selectors Hub as well whenever I do automation, teach. So most of the places I rely on Selectors Hub, right? So now in order to add this to Chrome, I'll simply go ahead and click on add to Chrome and click on add extension, and you'll see what all details it can read basically. So it can read and change all your data on all website, display notifications, modify data that you copy and paste, right? So these are basically, like some of the details that you need to basically read. So basically, if you are comfortable that yes, I'm okay, you can simply go ahead and click on add extension, right? So once the extension will be added, all right, you will see that the icon appeared here. All right, so now in order to make sure that this icon appears, right, so it appeared briefly there in the right hand side and then it disappeared. So what you need to do is simply click on this icon here and pin this Selectors Hub. All right, so simply click on the pin and you will see the Selectors Hub icon is visible there. Now what we have to do is we have to simply close all the browsers, okay, and reopen the browser. So I'll simply go ahead and reopen the browser. So let me close all of the browsers. So basically we have to close everything and then reopen. Okay, now you'll see the Selectors Hub is visible there. All right, now in order to start using Selectors Hub, the first thing you have to do is basically do not use it in the blank page there. All right, so do not use it in the blank page. You have to make sure that you are on some of the URL, right? So at the moment, if I simply go ahead and click on Selectors Hub here, right, I'll see all of the details there for the Selectors Hub. But if I go ahead and say, for example, right click and want to inspect this particular search page, now you will feel that yes, this is basically google.com page. But if I go ahead and inspect it, and in order to get the Selectors Hub, okay, let me expand it. In order to get the Selectors Hub menu here, you need to go here in the right hand side. You will see more tools, right? And then you will see Selectors Hub will be visible. Okay, now here you will see that as soon as I have opened Selectors Hub interface, I'll see that don't use it in the blank tab, open google.com, right? So this is basically what the most common error that you might come across, but you will get the tool tip and the tip there right then and there within the Selectors Hub. So you know that what you are doing wrong. Okay, so if I now go ahead and say google.com, right, and hit enter, now I am on a particular URL, right? And now you will see that Selectors has automatically recognized the selectors, or basically the XPath, CSS selector, and different types of paths there in the right hand side. If I want to inspect this particular web element, right, say for example this search, I simply now go ahead and right click on inspect, and it will automatically refresh it will highlight that particular web element that has been inspected, and will also give me different available XPath and CSS selectors for that particular web element automatically here in the right hand side. For example, this one is the CSS selector, and this number that you see is showing how many copies. Basically, if it is showing 1, that means this is particularly unique selector on this particular page. This is the relative XPath, this is index XPath, test trigger, which is another tool path, and then jQuery, right? So this is briefly how you are going to install SelectorsHub and then start using SelectorsHub. Okay, now I have already posted a full tutorial series on XPath and CSS selectors. So what I'll be doing is I'll be going through the same series, the same contents, and we'll be trying to use SelectorsHub and the Chrome default dev tool. Basically, if we have to write the XPath by default, and then how quickly SelectorsHub will be able to help us to write the XPath. Okay. So now, if say for example, let me open that particular page. Okay, so these were the slides for the Selenium XPath complete course. Okay, now say for example, I have to try to find out the XPath. Now, if you're using any web automation, right, which has the background of Selenium, and you want to identify any of the web element, XPath and CSS selectors getting stuck there or trying to find out the relevant XPath and CSS selector becomes really tricky. And that's where we have to learn the techniques. And that's what I have explained in this whole course, what all key techniques that are required to basically build your robust XPath that won't fail, and then use it in your Selenium scripts. Now with SelectorsHub, all of this basically finding these XPath becomes really easy. And SelectorsHub is not just blindly to copy and paste. You can actually use it as an IDE to learn all of these concepts within SelectorsHub. Okay, so now if we talk about XPath function, I won't go into the details of the complete XPath now because this is the SelectorsHub course. If you want to learn the detailed tutorial on the XPath, the tutorial is available on the YouTube. I'll put the link for that. So go ahead and watch it prior to watching this SelectorsHub tutorial. Now say for example, XPath function starts with, alright, or if you have to identify any basic XPath, right? So if I go next, what is the basic XPath syntax? It is basically the tag name, / tag name, and then the attribute and the value, right? Now if I have to find this with default Chrome features, okay, or the browser features. So if I'm not using SelectorsHub, say for example, right, and I go for example here, let's say we are on the google.com, right, and I have to find the selector or the locator for this particular search page, okay, and I'm not using SelectorsHub. So what I'll do is I'll simply right click, okay, and I'll click on inspect. Let me close this first. Okay, so simply say for example, I go to google.com and I want to identify this locator for this search. So I'll right click on inspect, and then it will highlight the code which is relevant for this particular search box, right? So you'll see that this is highlighted here in the blue, light blue. I'll simply go ahead and click on Control F, and it will search, or it will open this find by string selector XPath, this search box. Okay, now if I have to use this default syntax of the XPath, I'll go ahead with the tag name and then the attribute and provide some of the value for the attribute that I'm choosing. Okay, so @attribute and the value. So what is the tag name for this search? So if you see here, the tag name starts with input, right? And what are some of the attributes for this particular web element? It is basically the class, the JS action, all of these that you see, type, name, auto capitalize, autocomplete, all of these are the attributes for this tag, and the values are in the blue, in the double quotes. These are the values. Now if I have to write this XPath myself, I will simply go ahead with say input, okay, and as soon as I'll start typing input, the control will go to the first input tag that is available on this page. So I have to come back, right click on inspect again, and then it will again get me to this location here, right? It is not necessary, but then I have to come here because I have to see what attributes are available so I can choose the attribute and value, right? So here now within these square brackets, I can type in any attribute that is available, that is unique, that I can see, right? So for example, this role or the name or the type, right? So let's see with the role. So if I say I'll be using the attribute role, so I can simply say role, right? And then provide the value for the role. What is the value of the role? It is combo box, right? So I'll simply copy and paste combo box there and close it, and you'll see that all of this code or this particular web element has been uniquely identified, which is 1 of 1. And now this 1 of 1 is not 100% correct all the time, right? So you have to be careful about it, but then most of the time you can rely that if it is basically highlighting this particular web element and it is showing 1 of 1, that means it is a unique web element. So this is what we have to do to write the selector using the default Chrome dev search box and then identifying. Now if I have to do the same thing, using SelectorsHub, okay? So say for example, I right click on inspect and then open SelectorsHub. From right here, click on SelectorsHub. You will see the locator has been created or generated automatically, right? The relative XPath, CSS selector. Now what we have done here previously, we have manually created only the XPath. Now SelectorsHub will help you to create all different type of paths or locator in one place, right? We have CSS selector as well, we have XPath as well, we have index XPath. So whichever we want to use, we can simply copy using this icon. So for example, I can copy this. I want to use CSS selector. I will copy and I'll use it in my script for entering any of the value here in this search box. Okay, so this is how easy it becomes. Now if you have to use SelectorsHub to learn writing the XPath, right? So say for example, you do not want to use any of the XPaths and you want to learn it, right? So that is also very easy here. So I will simply say, for example, I want to write the custom XPath for this particular search box. So I'll simply start with / and you will see immediately it will start showing me the input tag, right? This is basically the input tag. So we'll simply select input tag. And then as soon as I'll start with the square bracket, okay, you will see all of the attributes for the input tag, right? So all of the attribute for the input tag and all other details are also available, right? So here if we simply, for example, let me go to the web element, right? So you will see that the class, right, the autocomplete, both, right, whichever is highlighted, right, whichever web element is highlighted, because I have right click and inspected this particular web element, all of the attributes and the value combination is automatically shown to us. Okay, so I can simply go ahead and say, for example, use any of it. Okay, so type, title, role, right, used role. So I can simply select the role. Okay, I choose the title, so I can simply say input at, okay, so / input, and then I can choose any of it, right? So for example, here we'll choose at role combo box, and that's basically my XPath. I'll hit enter and you'll see one element matching, right? So this is the XPath that I have written using the role combo box. So within just that drop down, all of the attributes and the values will be automatically visible. Okay, and if we know this basic XPath, if we know that this is the format of the basic XPath, we can directly choose the value from the drop down. So it will become really easy and quick for us to go ahead and write the XPath within SelectorsHub. Okay, so now let's move further. So if we say, for example, have to use the function starts with, okay, now we know the function starts with will help us to identify any of the web element which have certain part of the value as static and then certain part as a dynamic. Say for example, there is a attribute which, say for example, is type or ID, which is having the value as session and then some number, and number changes with every refresh of the page. So we can say starts with, right? So tag name starts with, and then provide the attribute and the value. Okay, so we can just provide the static value as the value. So now if I have to write this particular XPath manually, I will simply go ahead here in the default Chrome here, and I can say, okay, input, and then you will see the control automatically goes to the first. So I have to again right click on inspect and then come back here. Okay, and now I'll start typing it starts with, right, and then I'll simply say the attribute, okay, and the value of the attribute. So for the value of the attribute, so for example, it is combo, right? So I can say combo. Okay, and so it starts with, and then the role combo. So combo box. Okay, let me close this. So it is not selecting. Let me try using some other attributes. So for example, class starts with class and then say GL. So here I'm doing a little bit of mistake there. There needs to be a bracket which is different, right? So it's not the square bracket, right? So it's a normal bracket. So add the attribute and then value, right? So that's the mistake here. So let me change it, and I will simply use normal bracket there. So it starts with normal bracket, and then it will basically find that yes, this class starts with GL, whatever. Okay, and then if rest of the value is dynamic, that's how basically you will use starts with. Okay, so you can see how tedious it was, and it was error prone. Okay, now let's do the same thing in SelectorsHub. Okay, so I have to figure out what I was doing wrong there. Now if I go ahead and use this same thing, so I'll start with the input tag. Okay, let me type again so I can say input, right? And then simply with the square bracket, if I start typing in starts with, you will see that it will automatically help me to get that function starts with. Okay, and then I will simply, you will see that if say for example I enter, right, you will see that close square bracket missing, right, invalid XPath, all of this error will be shown automatically there. Right now, because I have used starts with, so I'll then do another bracket and I'll start with say for example the attribute. Okay, as soon as I'll start typing in the @, it will show me all the attributes, right, all the attributes that are available. So for example, for this one I want to choose class, so I can simply go ahead and choose class, right? Or I want to choose JS action, right? So I can use JS action. For example, let me use JS action. Okay, and then I can simply go ahead and provide the value. So I can, in the codes, I can simply say whatever value. Now for the value, it is visible here and it doesn't disappear if you're using this particular add-on. So I can simply go ahead and say, yeah, it starts with paste. So I can say paste, right? And then we'll close the bracket. And then if I hit enter, you will see that again, it will give me error, square bracket missing. So I can go ahead and know that yes, I have to add square bracket and hit enter, and you will see one element matching, right? So this is basically how I'm going to use SelectorsHub to basically practice or use it as an IDE to write any of the XPath and learn any of the XPath. It will help us to visualize if there are any errors, okay, during the whole process, and then also help us to see what all attributes automatically are available. Then it will also help us to basically find the values of those attributes right then and there, okay, rather than again inspecting again and again and disappearing. With the default dev tools, you can still do it, but it is tedious and it is error prone. Okay, it won't throw any error that where you are doing the mistake. Okay, so it is easy when you use SelectorsHub and practice using SelectorsHub. Now let's go ahead with another function, which is contains, right? So another function is contains. So if I have to use contains and any of the attribute contains some of the text which is static and some is dynamic, right? So I can use just the static content and write the XPath. Say for example, this same JS action, I know that the part which is 29D is dynamic, right? And then there is something in the front as well which is dynamic. Only the content which is PUI is static. Then I can use contains, right? So if I'm using SelectorsHub, I'll simply say, contains. Okay, as soon as I'll start typing C, you will see that automatically it will help me to get all of the details. So contains with attribute and the value automatically. Okay, so if I go ahead and see JS action, so let's see if JS action is there, you will see that it has automatically chosen that contains, right? So if I simply go ahead and choose it, so it will say contains and add JS action and then the value, right? So it has taken the whole value there. Now if I have to update it, now I can simply go ahead and remove whatever is dynamic, okay, and then use the rest of it as the XPath. Okay, so this is how easy it becomes to use or create your XPath. Okay, now you have to understand the concepts. You have to definitely know the XPath concepts. And that's where I'm going ahead and explaining that these are some of the functions. If you don't know what starts with is, where to use starts with, what contains is, then it doesn't matter if you're using tool, you won't be able to understand. You can only go ahead and simply copy whatever default selectors are. But if you know that yes, this is the selector that I don't want to use, which has been recommended by default, I can write my own. You can use SelectorsHub console to write your own and learn all of these XPath concepts. Okay. Now the next one is text method. Okay. Now if I have to use the text method, right, to see or to click on any web element using the text, then I can simply use the text method to see what all web elements are there. Okay. So say for example, if I go ahead with this advertising, right? So if I right click and inspect this, you will see that it has a text advertising here. Okay. Now you will see that automatically SelectorsHub has provided us the locators. Okay. Automatically I can see the locators available here. Okay. And with the normalized space, right? Now if I don't want to use, I can write my own. Okay. So I know that this is the anchor tag. Okay. Because you will see that this starts with the A. So I'll simply choose anchor tag, right? And I can use the text function. So with the square bracket, if I start typing in text, okay, as soon as I'll type in T, it will give me the recommendation. Okay. You want to use text, and go ahead and use text. Whatever text is available here, I can simply double click and it will form the XPath for me. And you will see that it has recognized it automatically. And this is the XPath that I can copy and use it, right? If I want to save it, I can simply click on this selectors list, right? So click on save and then it will get saved, right? So you will see save in selectors list. It will get saved in the selectors list. Okay, you'll see that it is available here in the selector. So if I simply, copy it, will get copied, right? If you want to delete this saved list, simply click on this delete icon here and the saved selector will be deleted. Okay, so this is how you are going to use text method. Now, other methods, for example, and or, absolutely similar, nothing, tricky. So basically with the tag name, I can use one attribute. With the or expression, I can use another attribute as well. Okay. Now within SelectorsHub, how I can do it? So for example, for this search box, okay, I'll inspect. Now this is the input tag. So I can start with input, right? And as soon as I'll start typing, whichever web element will be selected, whatever tag it is, SelectorsHub will automatically select or display that particular tag, right? Now, because this is input and in the square bracket, I can use two attributes and values of those attributes with and or expression. Okay. For example, I can say auto capitalize is equal to off. Okay. This is one of the attribute. And then I can say, or then I'll use another attribute. So for example, I want to use role, right? So you'll see as soon as I'll start typing in role, it will give me that recommendation role, and role is equal to combo box, right? And hit enter and you will see the element is matching. So this is basically how easy it becomes to write the XPath. Now, if I want to change it to and, I can change it to and you will see that it is still matching with those two attributes, right? Now if I have to use this here, so I would have gone ahead with the input tag. As soon as I'll go ahead with the input tag, it will go to the first tag, right? First input tag. Then I have to again go ahead, right click, inspect, come back here and then start typing in basically all of the available attributes first. Say for example, I'll copy the attribute first. Okay, paste it, and then I have to copy the value, right? Which is kind of very error prone. Here because you get auto suggestion, it helps you a lot, right? Because you don't have to remember or worry about any of the spelling mistakes in this case. Okay, so now let's go further and see some of the other options that are available here. Now, access methods. Okay, so I'll explain a little bit about the access methods. For example, parent, child, and self. Now, these access methods help you to identify the web element based on the context of relationship, based on the relationship. So, for example, you are at the current level, current node. Based on that node, what is the parent node, what is the child node? In that context, you can write the XPath, right? So, for example, you have the input tag, right? And the input tag has some value, attribute and value. And then you do / and provide the parent of that. So based on this input tag, what is the parent of this input tag, right? So for example, this input tag here, okay? And if I want to select the parent of this input tag, I can use the input tag and then I can say what is the parent. The parent is this style is at the same level and div is the parent, right? So if I have to select this div, I can use the access methods, okay? So in order to use access method, SelectorsHub provides default functionality of access. You can click to generate access based XPath automatically, but you can also write, right? So if I click on this access XPath, okay, first I have to inspect the parent, right? And then I can inspect the child, right? So if I click on inspect parent, okay, and I say simply select and inspect the parent, okay. So click on this DevTools inspector, will inspect this particular web element, right? Now, because this is the last web element, right? So if I'm inspecting, there is no child below it, right? This is the input tag and there is no child, right? So that is why it is disabled. You can see easily that yes, there is no child and that is why it is kind of disabled. So first we have to, if we are inspecting with the Chrome Dev tool, we simply inspect the parent. Say for example, this whole box here, right? Now we are in the div, okay? So that div has been selected. Now with context to this parent, I want to inspect the child, right? So now if I go and see that inspect child has been enabled, and if I hover over, we can use DevTool inspector to inspect the child. So I can select the locator, the inspector again, and go to the child within this div, right? Which is this search box. So click on that and you will see automatically based on that parent, okay, this access XPath has been created, which we can simply go ahead and copy and use it in our script, okay? Now there are many access XPath. For example, this is more of a parent child, right? But then there are many other access methods that you can use as well, okay? And within SelectorsHub, I can simply go ahead and write those access XPath and also make sure that they are unique by, entering. So for example, if I enter this one, you will see one element matching. This is basically showing that yes, this element is unique on this particular page, right? So this is how you are going to generate access XPath automatically in XPath or in SelectorsHub, okay? Now this is for parent and child. Now if I have to use this particular method to write the access XPath, right? So the one that you see here is automatically generated. But if I have to use this same approach to write manually, so what I'll do is I'll simply go ahead and in this case, the parent div of this particular input is, say for example, this one, right? Which has this SDK EP, right? And then I can simply go ahead with the // okay? And then we can say child and /: there, okay? And now for this particular parent, okay, which child node we want to select, right? Which child node we want to select is the input, right? So if we say input and hit enter, you will see one element has been matching, which has been highlighted, right? So in reference to this input tag is being highlighted, okay? If I want to select, say for example, this div with reference to div, right? So this is the div. So if I simply go ahead and change it to div, you will see this one has been selected, which is basically the whole div there. Okay, so ideally when you are writing these access XPath yourself, go ahead and see what is the web element and what is the direct parent of this. So for this input tag, direct parent is this div, right, which has this attribute JS controller. So if I have to go ahead and write it, I will simply, in terms of a div, I'll simply go ahead to this particular div here, and I know that this value or the class is this one, okay? So I can simply go ahead and say at class, okay, and use the value of that particular class. So here the parent is, the direct parent is this class, right? So I will use this value here for the class, okay, and then close the bracket. Now I have to use the access method, so I'll use // okay, and then I will simply say child, okay, and as soon as I'll start typing in child, you will see that it will help me to get all the child, right? So what all childs are there? Style, right? So style tag is there is one div tag, and there is one input tag, right? So these are the 3 childs available below this div that we have selected, and automatically SelectorsHub has helped us to basically identify. Let me close this access here, and we'll simply go ahead and start typing, right? So you'll see that all of these are automatically selected here. So I can use input, right? Because I want to select input, which is child of this div. I'll double click on it and hit enter, and you'll see that element has been highlighted here, which is one element matching. So this is how I'm going to manually write and learn Access XPath within SelectorsHub. Very good feature, I would say, and a lot of time saving in terms of learning XPath. Okay, I can automatically generate Access XPath. I can learn manually all the concepts right here in the SelectorsHub interface. Okay, now apart from these access method, there are other methods, for example, descendant or self. Okay, so if I have to use any other access method, for example, descendant or self. So in the parent and child, we used to have this parent and then double colon and then the tag name of the descendant. When we say descendant, it is basically saying if you have a grandfather, okay, who all are descendants of the grandfather. So grandfather has, say, for example, two children, and they have one of the child has three children, another child has two children, right? So who all are descendant of the grandparents, two children, okay, and then three children of the first child and two children of the second child. So if that's the family basically, so 3 to 5 and 2 people who are the parents basically will be 7, right? So grandparent will have 7 descendants, 2 of their direct child and then 5 grandchildren, right? So that's what descendant method, access method is all about. Okay, so if we go ahead and want to use the descendant, okay, so here instead of child, right, I can simply go ahead and start typing in descendant, okay, and you'll see automatically all the descendant will appear. Okay, you'll see that descendant style, div and input, all of these are the descendants for this parent, right? So if you see in the style, there is no other tag, right? So that is why only 3 descendants are visible, and with the descendant I can choose which descendant tag I want to choose. If I want to choose div, input or whatever. So if I choose input, I change it, so I'll say descendant, right, and I can select descendant and input, and it will choose the same locator here as we have seen for the child, right? Because child is anyways descendant of input, right? But what is the difference between child and descendant? So child will be the direct child. When you use child, it will be the direct child, but when you will use descendant, it will give you all the descendant tag which are of type input. Okay, say for example, if we talk about this particular, okay, div. Now this div has multiple divs here. Okay, now if I use this, so for example, class is UU. So I'm looking for this particular parent. Okay, now if I hit enter, you will see that this particular web element is selected, right? So this parent is selected. Now if I say descendant, okay, descendant, and then I say all the descendant divs within this div. Okay, so if I hit enter, you will see 17 divs are matching here. Okay, so that means there are 17 child divs or descendant or grandchild below this div. Okay, so this is one div, this is another div, and within this div there are other divs, right? So these are also the descendants of this root div, right? So if I say now without descendant, if I say child, okay, and then say div, you will see all of the child divs that are below here, right? So all of the child or descendant, basically just the child, will be selected here. Now apart from that, descendants or self. Okay, so if I say descendant or self, okay, so somehow there is the auto suggestion for this method is not available. So we can simply go ahead and type and then say div. If I hit enter, you will see 18 elements matching. Why? Because we have also included self. So what we are saying is include self as well, this root node div as well, if this div or the tag here matches this, right? So in that case, this self is also included and all the descendant divs are also included. If I say style here, okay, if I say style, okay, because there are some style tag as well which are child, okay, you'll see 8 style tags are there below this div here. Okay, and if I change it to descendant and then say style, okay, you'll see still 8 matches. Why? Because the tag here doesn't match the tag here. Okay, so when we say descendant or self, it will ensure that the tag that you are using here should match with the root tag. Okay, and then it will display. So basically this is this is what and how you are going to use the descendant or descendant itself method to find the XPath within SelectorHub. Similarly, there are other methods, for example, ancestor or self, okay? Then following sibling, preceding sibling. All of this is absolutely easy to use. Now here, instead of using descendant, I can say following, okay? If I say double forward slash and I start typing following, you will see following sibling, all of that is automatically shown, okay? If I go ahead and say preceding, it will start giving me the recommendation for preceding. So it becomes really easy to start learning XPath and CSS selector using SelectorsHub, okay? So I can simply say preceding sibling and then see all the preceding siblings which are having the tag div. Okay, so this is briefly correlation of whatever I have taught in the Selenium XPath series or the XPath series. So go ahead with the XPath series, learn all the concepts of XPath and then try to replicate those concepts in the default Chrome dev and then in the SelectorsHub, and you will see that how easy your life becomes when you are using this particular plugin and using SelectorsHub basically for writing any of the XPath and CSS selector. Okay, now this is briefly about the SelectorsHub. Okay, now let's talk about this is briefly about the creation of different XPath manually using SelectorsHub. Let's talk about some of the key features that are available there. Okay, so now if I talk about some of the interface options, okay, so here we have already saw that if I click here, if you want to save the selectors in the list, say for example I have inspected and I want to copy or say for example save the selector, I can say copy it, I can paste it here, okay, and I can save it in the list, right? And you'll see that saved selector will be available here. If I want to delete, I can simply go ahead and click on delete and all the selectors that are being saved will be deleted. Now you'll see different options here, right? So text, ID, class name, etc. So if I hover over here you will see this attribute filter. Basically these are different attributes that are being used for generating the automatic locators. Say for example you do not want to use class for generating any of the selectors, so you deselect that. You do not want to use ID, you do not want to use text, so automatically all of that will be adjusted and your locators that are being generated by default will be selected or displayed in SelectorsHub based on values or attributes other than that you have selected here. Okay, let me keep it default. Now apart from that, you can also click on set attribute. Okay, as soon as you will click on set attribute, you will see this particular bar here. If you want to disable it or hide it, click on that and that will disappear. If you see here, you will see this icon is set driver command to append on selectors. Okay, so this is basically if you click on this driver, so you'll see that driver.find element by.xpath and then the XPath value, it will basically then append all of the locators that are being highlighted or being selected here with this particular statement. So most of the time you will see driver.find element you type in, right? So you can go ahead and simply copy it and use it in your script. If say for example if it is case sensitive, right? So I can simply change it to whatever case I want to use. So if I say by.xpath, which is uppercase, then I simply change it here, hit enter, and all of these will be automatically adjusted with that uppercase. Okay, so this is very good feature if we want to save time in terms of copying the whole statement directly here and then using it in our script. Okay, we'll go to the next option here, which is click to generate locator page and multiple selectors. Okay, so if you click on here, you will see that it will help us to create multiple selector, right? So say for example I want to create selector for this particular web element, right? And then say for example I want to create selector for this link here as well. Okay, then I want to create selector for images as well. Then I want to create selector for Google search, then for this particular button, right? So all of these selectors you will see by default have been automatically copied and available here. I can simply go ahead and copy all of these selectors. Okay, if I'm happy that yes, this is all good, or I can export it in the XLS, I can delete, right? If I want to use CSS selectors, I can simply copy that, the ID and name if it is available, the class, all of these details that are available for the selectors that we have chosen, button will be available here. Okay, so if I simply go ahead and copy, and let me open Notepad, I can go ahead and paste all of these, right? So these I can go ahead and directly use into our script for the locators that I have copied, right? It has also had this appended driver.find element, so which can be used directly in the script. Okay, so this is more of a recording if you want to record multiple locators without leaving the interface on all the page and basically use it. Okay, now what is this debugger feature? So debugger feature is really helpful for the scenarios wherein, say for example, there is some hover. Okay, so for example, say we go to ebay.com. Okay, so let me copy ebay.com. Now if I go ahead and let's say after hovering any of the, you will see that as soon as I hover home and garden, this menu appears, okay, and then it disappears. Alright, now so for example, I have to inspect home and garden. I'll simply go ahead and right click and then it will come here. Now again that disappears, right? So with the debugger feature, this will be a lot easier. So if I turn on the debugger, okay, so let me go back here and let's try to turn on the debugger. Okay, so let me move this page a little bit. So here if we hover over, it is still loading. So if you hover over, you will see that it is displaying the submenu which disappears. So with debugger, if we simply turn on the debugger, okay, and then hover over, so you have to make sure that within 5 seconds this, you have to make sure that this action appears. Okay, because the setting in the SelectorsHub for debugger is 5 seconds. We can change the setting, and now you will see that this menu appears here. Okay, and now I can go ahead and inspect any of the web element on this particular menu and it won't disappear, right? So debugger feature and using debugger feature is absolutely important to learn in SelectorsHub, right? Because this will help you to pause the script, okay, pause the execution, and if there is any dynamic element that disappears based on the mouse over, that you can stop here. And this happens very commonly in any of the travel website when you are typing from and to location. You will see that menu appears, and as soon as you move the mouse to some other place, it will disappear. Okay, so that's where this debugger feature will be really helpful. In order to use it, simply click on turn on this debugger feature, and then within 5 seconds hover over or start using, or basically whichever web element you want to identify, which dynamically appears by hovering or anything. Just make sure that you enable that within 5 seconds. Okay, so let me unpause it, start it, right, and then debugger has stopped. Okay, so if I go back here, all right, let me right click and inspect. Let me open SelectorsHub and talk about little bit more features. So we have talked about the debugger, and then let's say what exactly this is. This is XPath healing, so we'll talk separately about this XPath healing. And then if you want to select the generate SelectorsHub with double quote, you simply click on that and it will generate the selectors with the double quotes, right? So you'll see it has generated based on the double quote, right? So you'll see that. Then if you want to expand selectors block to see all generated selector, okay, you can click on that and it will expand basically all that particular block. For the settings, if you click on the settings here, right, let me move it a little bit here, and you will see all of the selectors and the UI buttons that you can configure. Now you'll see the debugger start time here as well. So at the moment it's 5. You can set it based on whatever value that you want, right? So basically this setting will help you to make sure that if, say for example, it is set with 5 seconds, you have to, after starting debugger, you have to ensure that that dynamic element appears within 5. Then here, which selectors you want to make sure they appear. So for example, I don't want this test trigger path, I don't want jQuery, I don't want JS path, right? I only want tag name, absolute XPath, index XPath, right, relative XPath. Okay, so I can uncheck whichever XPaths I do not want to see in the list, okay, from the settings here. And then if I'll go ahead and inspect any of the web element, right, if I'll disable all of this, you will see those details that I have chosen, okay, won't be appearing here. All right, so you'll see no test trigger, no other details that have been deselected in the settings are appearing here. Okay, so this is briefly about the Selectors Hub, how easy it will make your life in order to identify the web element, learn how to write the XPath. It's not just blindly copying the locators from here, it's more of the learning, and by seeing at the locators, by playing around with different values with the debugger, it will help you to learn the concepts of XPath a lot quicker. Okay, and make sure that you watch the XPath and CSS selector tutorial series prior to using Selectors Hub and trying to learn, right? So you can anyways go ahead with the default browser selectors and the learning basically by doing this Control F and then learning and writing the XPath here. But then the recommendation would be to use Selectors Hub and practice writing XPath within Selectors Hub. Compare what the suggestion is. Most of the time you will be finding the locators automatically, right? And then you will be using it automatically generated selectors, which will be good enough. But then understand the concept and then use the automatically generated locators. If automatically located generators are not relevant, then you can anyways know that how you can use Selectors Hub to write the locators and use them in your scripts. Okay, so that's all for this Selectors Hub tutorial, a complete tutorial on Selectors Hub, very detailed. I hope this was helpful. Thank you very much for watching.